Who do you think of first when you hear the name Green Lantern? Hal Jordan? Kyle Rayner? Some obscure glupshido motherfucker? For me, it's Jon Stewart. I mean, I was basically raised on the 2001 Justice League cartoon, can you blame me? But throughout that show and its sequel series, Justice League Unlimited, the greater mythos of the DC animated universe's Green Lantern Corps just kept expanding, introducing more GLs than I can count. Well, okay, I could take the time to count them, but I don't wanna. And while a lot of the ones we've seen in the DCAU have been dudes, what about the Lady Lanterns? Sure, Kat Matui featured in a story, and we got cameos from Arisia and Boudica, barely. But hell, they had to make one up for the Amazo episode for lack of good options at the time. We finally got an Earth-based girl Green Lantern, Jessica Cruz, in the most recent major DCAU project put to screen, the feature film Justice League vs. the Fatal Five. Wait, that came out all the way back in 2019?
How time flies. 5.5 years went by, just like that.
While the film released over a decade after the cartoon series had come to an end, time within the actual world of that cartoon had only passed by a couple years. This movie not only teased that world-building gap, but several others. And we're here today to see if we just might be able to solve one of those mysteries. We know Jessica Cruz became a Green Lantern off-screen, but when and how? And is there perhaps a much darker element to it all than you might think? I moved into my house like 4 years ago, but I've been so busy with YouTube videos and raising my child that my living room walls still look like this. If only there was some company that made really cool, like, metal posters of art from my favorite franchises or something. Oh my goodness! Displate is sponsoring this video, and I couldn't be happier. I've been looking at their posters online for a long time, and I can't tell you how excited I am to finally have some of my own. I'm a geek of many faces beyond just the Batman stuff, so I figured I'd spruce this place up a bit with some artwork from other media that makes my brain feel nice. Master Chief, you mind telling me what you're doing on that wall? Sir. Being extremely easy to hang up and looking cool as hell. Putting up normal posters or picture frames or whatever always has me feeling like I'm in a black and white infomercial. Like, I don't know how I spill spaghetti on myself every time. Where did the spaghetti come from? But Displate's posters have these sticky magnets you put up, and then since the poster's metal, it just goes clack into place. No holes in the posters, no holes in your walls, no holes in your heart. They come in several different sizes and different sheens, including textra, which adds depth and dimension to what already looks pretty sick on its own. Displate has over 2 million pieces of artwork to choose from, everything from superheroes to anime to Star Wars, The Office, Breaking Bad, Doctor Who, pretty much anything you can think of, even just cute dogs and cats and stuff. I know you care about sci-fi comic book business because you're watching this video, but maybe Aunt Patty just wants this one that says, "The Return of Vampire." He's like a Dracula, oh my god. They get to you super fast, so if you're looking for some Christmas gifts you won't have to worry about, I'd seriously recommend checking out their Black Friday sale, which is offering the biggest discounts of the whole year. Get up to 44% off your entire order using our code Watchtower, which includes discounts on the Textra posters for the very first time. Psst. Displate also gave us an extra Mask of the Phantasm poster, which we'll be giving away later in this video, so stick around. Thank you so much, Displate. These are very shway. Now, back to Jessica Cruz. I'm gonna stop you right there. I know you're about to leave a comment telling me that Justice League vs. the Fatal Five isn't DCAU canon. You're gonna point to unexplained time jumps or unknown whereabouts of characters as plot holes, inconsistencies which prove this isn't part of the same continuity as the DCAU at large, that it would be pointless to even continue to talk about this. The rest of the video doesn't matter, yada yada yada. But
fans, you can it's either in continuity or not. You guys can decide on your own.
If you're still stuck on the canonicity of a cartoon old enough that it shares its exact birthday with Blake Shelton's God's Country, then please open up a new tab, go watch our Will It Canon episode about it, and then come back here when you're ready to play ball. For the rest of you, let's proceed.
So yes, it's canon. There's your headline.
When you think of what a canon movie is, it's that.
What do we know of Jessica Cruz's origin from the movie? We're introduced to her her character through a nightmare that doubles as a flashback, showing us a grisly scene where Jessica and her friends stumble upon a murderer burying bodies in the forest. He spots the group, and soon they're in his clutches as well, as he shoots Jessica's friends dead. Oh, Jesus, okay, maybe I don't need to show the whole thing. Look, she manages to escape, finds herself at the edge of a cliff, and gets the Bruce Wayne in World's Finest treatment, falling into the abyss. We don't get to see what happens next, but we know she survived because she's non-Justice Leaguer main character 1 of 2 for the rest of this movie. Interestingly, this was actually the first time we ever saw Jessica Cruz's origin depicted in anything, even the mainline comics. As of 2019, we'd only ever gotten a couple glimpses in the New 52 books, but they were always just brief flashes or ring constructs or even a convoluted dream, never the real deal. Of course, you could say even this isn't us witnessing the actual event, since it too is a dream, but it's the most straightforward narrative presentation we've ever seen. The director commentary even mentions how they strive to make this sequence really feel as much like a horror movie as possible, like a Friday the 13th scenario, so that the trauma Jessica carries with her would be believable. For the rest of the film, her anxiety is on full display. The DCAU Jessica Cruz and her afflictions were made to be as close to her comics counterpart as possible, yet loose enough of an adaptation that she could work seamlessly within this animated continuity. I mean, a lot of folks like to rag on her hair being shorter, but hey, I married a Jessica with almost this exact haircut, so no problems here.
I'm probably going to get a lot of crap for changing her hair that way, but...
You're used to it.
Yeah.
You can take it.
The next thing we know, it's present day. She's leaving a therapy session early because the Green Lantern ring she keeps in her bag is lighting up with space Snapchat notifications. Quite the leap, both in time and in lack of explanation. Here, when we truly meet Jessica, she has a GL ring, and she is this film's exclusive Earth Green Lantern. Limelight? Starboy keeps calling her Limelight over and over again.
I have to find the Limelight. They want the Limelight. I can't let them get to Limelight.
How do you know me?
Everyone knows Limelight.
I'm pretty sure that was Eric's invention, and the idea was that it was how Starboy's neurodivergent mind remembered Green Lantern. So it would be weird if anyone else would know her by that name.
I just used a nickname as a shorthand for what I needed. It's him knowing it has something to do with green light and not quite remembering the details. It was my idea, and that I sat back from my computer and loudly said, I need a cute nickname for a Green Lantern, and my fiancée, Emily, instantly said Limelight as she walked by.
Adorable. Something Jessica Cruz related wives high five. So not an actual name she goes by in the future.
Limelight. Green Lantern?
She is Green Lantern. Man, even Toonami thought her name was Limelight.
The Fatal Five search for Limelight. Not canon!
But okay, tangent aside, here's the problem. Why is there a different Green Lantern now? Why isn't it my man John Stewart? Well, look, the DCAU history of the Green Lanterns of Space Sector 2814, where Earth resides, is kinda muddy. We got Abin Sur in Superman the Animated Series, who dies immediately, and his ring goes to newspaper artist Kyle Rayner. But by the time of Justice League, Kyle is nowhere to be found, and John is GL. Eventually, we get a couple offhand comments about Kyle being away in training, so at least they sort of touched on the switcheroo. But how does it work for Abin Sur and John Stewart to be Earth's GL at the same time? Well, Dwayne McDuffie probably said it best, as usual, so I'll just let him take this one.
We've explained John Stewart's background in bits and pieces. John was a Green Lantern long before Kyle, but not in this sector. He was with the Honor Guard. When Abin Sur got into trouble, his ring found another worthy Earthman, Kyle Rayner. When Kyle was reassigned for training, John came back to cover Earth sector, as was an opportunity to serve near his home planet.
We're even told that, unlike the usual system where a dead Lantern's ring finds a new ring bearer automatically, John was initially given the ring by the Guardians of Oa.
We chose wisely when we offered you the ring.
This is even how Kyle Rayner got his ring in 90s comics, in a completely different origin from STAS, and John's DCAU origin is doubtlessly different from 70s comics as well, where he was the backup of a backup after Guy Gardner got hit by a bus. Womp. I say all of this to set up the fact that within the DC animated universe, the rules of a Green Lantern's successor don't necessarily line up one-to-one with ye old comic books.
Anything goes.
Keen Green Lantern fans may even note that we never see Mogo in this universe, a Green Lantern who is a literal sentient planet, typically in charge of distributing the rings. Mogo is a no-show. So if John had a successor, say, Jessica Cruz, he wouldn't have to be outright dead necessarily for her to also be an Earth GL at the same time. In fact, he's definitely not dead, he's just serendipitously off-screen. Wonder Woman tells Jessica that John is off-world, preoccupied with an intergalactic war. So theoretically, Jessica is either his Sector 2814 replacement, or at the very least, a temporary stand-in while John is away.
Called John.
I don't know who this man is. Sorry to this man.
So I guess that all tells us why she's a Green Lantern to an extent, like why she can be there as GL in this movie and it doesn't make it non-canon. But how did this happen? And when could she have gotten her ring?
How long is this program? Because if you ask me a question like that, I can go on quite happily for the next 3.5 hours.
Many times I've seen the theory that as she falls off this cliff and the original scene fades to black, in reality a Green Lantern ring flies in and lands on her hand, and we get some kind of glorious Sailor Moon transformation sequence wherein Jessica dons the GL uniform for the very first time. At least that's how it looks in my head. Yes, I even brought this up as a possibility in our Fatal 5 video coverage way back when the movie came out because I want it to be true. It would just plain be cool. I mean, how else would she survive this fall? Right? Well, I guess we did see Harley Quinn fall to her apparent death and she was fine, or Joker like half a dozen times. Okay, it's happened more often than not, still waiting on Orm to reappear as Ocean Master. If things did happen this way, why wouldn't Jessica just immediately capture and turn in the gunman? Yeah, she still witnessed her friends being shot, but I'm sure the trauma would at least be lessened if she got justice like 2 minutes later. Nothing to say this didn't happen, but it doesn't feel like it did.
You've got to be sure, Data.
Please, everyone, just trust me.
An alternative theory that was brought to me by Yojimbo, webmaster of DCAU Resource, is one I like even better and has more tying it to the universe around it. Remember in the Justice League finale Starcrossed when this happens? John Stewart's ring gets obliterated by Hrotalic, and we don't see a fixed or replaced ring on John's broken hand for the rest of the episode. What if, back at GLHQ way out in space, a protocol of some kind was automatically triggered by the ring's destruction, presuming John was dead, and a new ring was sent out to seek a replacement? Said ring finds itself in the home of Jessica Cruz, who it deems as worthy because, well, like the ring literally says in the movie,
you have the ability to overcome great fear.
Now, through accidental error, Jessica and John are Earth's Green Lantern. Since the Watchtower blew up when Batman dropped it right on top of the Thanagarians' little science project, it'd take a bit of time for John to manage communications with Oa again, but once he does, everybody's like, whoops. They realize John's not dead, they get him a new ring, everything's fine in his world, but there's still the issue of Jessica, and from here, we basically catch up with where she's at in the movie. Both of these possible scenarios I think are really cool, but I'm not so sure either of them work, unfortunately. The big question we have to ask ourselves to solidify things is, how long has Jessica been a Green Lantern by the time of the Fatal 5 movie?
I love a challenge, and I finally have a real puzzle here.
We can guess John Stewart hasn't been
fighting Dominators on Ram
for very long. The Fatal 5's time sphere crash lands on Earth at the start of the movie, and Mr. Terrific tells Superman that Hawkgirl
tried to bash the hell out of it with that big-ass mace of hers just before she went back to Thanagar.
That's in reference to the same war with Rand that John's a part of, which we did a whole video about as well. If Shiera headed off within the time frame of the movie, chances are good that so did John and the rest of the GLs that are involved. So if Jessica is John's pseudo stand-in during this time, her establishment as a Lantern is probably pretty dang fresh, and that's backed up by several bits of info we get in her introductory scene.
Let's talk about this new job. A security position, right?
I didn't choose it. It kinda chose me.
New job. She says it's sorta stressful, so you'd think she's maybe been on a couple missions or fought some low-level bad guys of some sort and or has gone through a bit of training. She and Kilowog know each other after all.
Glad you did your homework, kid.
She's at least met the holographic roll call like Superman did forever ago, but when confronted by Wonder Woman, Jessica says,
"This is all one big mistake. This thing probably won't even work for me."
So it seems like she's never even really used the ring at all. The ring itself even strongly advises that she give it a recharge, that it's running on fumes at super low battery. It may still be running on its very first charge, or however charged it was when it first flew off to find her. All of this to imply Jessica is very green. I'm not proud of that.
In the first draft of the script, we didn't see Jessica's trauma, and trauma wasn't even specified. Her origin/trauma was added later. Besides being truer to the comics, on some level, I think it helped underline her experience as extreme enough to get the attention of a power ring.
The context of the movie does not lead me to believe Jessica Cruz has been a Green Lantern for any significant length of time whatsoever.
It's going to take time to heal.
It's been 3 years. I just need some kind of trick.
Yet, it's been 3 years since that fateful forest affair. That's a long gap of time left up to the unknown, no matter whether she's saved by the ring while falling off the cliff, or it just shows up inside a cheese sandwich years later. What will really help us out is determining whenever 3 years ago was, and whenever now is. Whoa, sick. I actually used that in a normal sentence.
Man, people out there in fanland are like, they have like detailed timelines, and this is canon and that isn't, and that comic over here is canon because it was mentioned in this one episode, and I'm like, okay.
I do that.
Okay, class, we're gonna do a quick math lesson here. Or history lesson? I don't know. Here we go. When does Justice League versus the Fatal Five take place on the DCAU timeline?
It probably takes place a year or 3 years after the Justice League Unlimited.
Well, if that's true, we gotta first understand when JLU happens. We did a video forever ago about Lex Luthor's presidential campaign, in which we uncovered that he must be running for the 2004 election. At the very beginning of the movie, the Fatal Five set the Time Sphere's time machine time clock time to November 20, the shot cutaway, but that's still extremely helpful as it's consistent with our prior findings. Once the bad guys arrive in the past and Batman stops naked Starboy, there's a 10-month jump. They don't say that on screen, but by the time we catch up with Starboy in Arkham later,
he's been here 10 months, and so far, he's a model patient.
So, with some quick pluses and minuses, we can easily narrow down the available gap to either November 2004 through September 2005, November 05 through September 06, or November 06 through September 07, to stay within Bruce Timm's suggested 1 to 3 years post-JLU. But it gets better. We can narrow it down even further by taking into consideration that Miss Martian passive-aggressively shape changes into Robin, Tim Drake, right after Batman refers to her as a teenager. Tim Drake's official bio for the new Batman adventure puts him at age 13 when he joins the Bat family in the DCAU's 1999, per our other timeline videos. So since he'd be 20 by 2006 and 21 by 2007, those options are now gone, leaving us with November 04 to September 05 as the time span of Justice League versus the Fatal Five.
Don't know where this lands in the timeline. Don't ask me that. Some fan will figure that out for me.
Tweet your answers to @JamesKrieg. He would like to hear all of this.
Okie dokie. All right, you still with me, folks? Math history class is over. You got this. So if Jessica's homicidal camping trip happens 3 years before the movie, more specifically 3 years before the 10-month jumped portion of the movie, that places Jessica's origin in roughly mid-2002. And this is where it gets interesting. The timing of the camping trip lines up precisely with the couple-month gap between the end of Justice League and the start of Justice League Unlimited. There's a handful of notable things that we know happened during this time period. Dozens of other superheroes are sent Justice League Save the Dates, Shiera Hall presumably goes to live with Dr. Fate inside his giant chess rook, Crotalic's Thanagarian fleet is destroyed by the Gordanians, rest in peace, and of course little cosmetic changes like Jon Stewart switching to the other Captain Sisko hairstyle. But one major event that we can deduce happened right around the same time that Jessica's friends go bye-bye is the animated feature film Justice League Crisis on Two Earths. Or at least a series of events that are very similar. You see, Crisis on Two Earths famously started out as a DCAU film titled Justice League Worlds Collide, written by Dwayne McDuffie to act as a bridge between the two JL shows. But for various reasons that we'll get into heavily some other time, I promise, the film was canceled and didn't see the light of day until 2010, when Warner Brothers was like, hey, we need a Justice League movie, please. And the creative team was like, oh boy, do we have one. Well, we don't want it to be JLU style. Oh, okay, what if we changed the art style, swapped out John for Hal, and got different voice actors? Is that different enough? Yes, that is precisely different enough. Begin! And so we got Crisis on Two Earths as we know it and love it.
It doesn't matter.
Because the movie was originally going to be set in DCAU continuity and features so much DCAU DNA that you can basically squint and call it canon, 95% of it in fact according to Bruce Timm, the fan base has more or less agreed that the same beats of the Two Earths movies still happened between JL and JLU. But interestingly, Justice League vs. the Fatal Five had almost the exact opposite production flip-flop, in that it started off in the Crisis on Two Earths continuity. Even the very first promo image for the movie featured the bad guy's moon base from that 2010 film. But because that world is visually designed by Phil Barassa, the crew switched gears in order to not potentially confuse audiences among the ongoing animated movies and Young Justice series that both also showcased Barassa's style. This led, much to my heart's utmost joy, to Fatal Five being styled after and set in the DC animated universe instead. But why is that important?
What the hell does this have to do with anything?
Well, if you know Jessica Cruz from the comics at all, then you know she didn't just get a Green Lantern ring plain and simple. Now, did she? Hey, remember earlier when I mentioned we're giving away a free Mask of the Phantasm poster from Displate? Oh, you skipped that part? Well, you dork, we're giving away a free Mask of the Phantasm poster from Displate. It's the Bruce Timm cover for the comic book adaptation of the movie. You know, the little baby-sized comic that came inside the VHS case back in the day? Oh, you weren't born yet? It's got that lovely textra finish, and it's cool enough that I'm actually going to be sad I have to mail it off to somebody. But you could be that somebody simply by leaving a comment below answering our question of the day from the end of this video, and then come back next video to see if you won. Alright, that's all. Now let's figure out what the heck's going on with that ring. When we first met Jessica Cruz way back during the Darkseid War comic event, she actually first appeared as a replacement for the Antimatter Universe's Green Lantern equivalent, known as Power Ring. Yes, this is a power ring, but it was also the name of this guy. I know it's confusing, Mom and Dad watching this, I'm sorry. Power Ring was a member of the Crime Syndicate, essentially doo-doo bad guy versions of the Justice League from a parallel reality. When he gets absolutely cremated by Sinestro, his ring seeks out a new host and finds Jessica Cruz, feeding on her fear and trauma from having witnessed her friend's murders, just like in the animated version. Long story short, she becomes possessed by the spirit of the ring, Volthoom, transforming her into the new capitalized proper noun Power Ring. With the help of the ever-compassionate Batman, she fights back and regains control of her body and of the ring. But the ring is soon after destroyed by DC's Grim Reaper, the Black Racer, and it seems as though Jessica has also died. However, Black Racer didn't kill her, but the evil spirit Volthoom. And so for her sacrifice and fearlessness, Jessica is awarded a true blue Green Lantern ring. Well, okay, I could have worded that better, but you get it, you're smart.
What is your favorite color? Blue. No, wait, green.
Not all of this necessarily works to have happened the exact same way in the DCAU, especially all the Darkseid versus the Anti-Monitor stuff going on in the background. Sure, we've seen the Black Racer in S-TAS for like 2 seconds, but this story involved off-the-wall craziness like the cursed Amazonian daughter of Darkseid, Lex Luthor gaining the Omega effect, Batman becoming a god, and all sorts of other stuff that's way out of bounds from what we know could have possibly been happening during this time in the animated universe. Suffice to say, shockingly, the DCAU and New 52 timelines simply are not the same. But the basic trajectory of Jessica Cruz's story could still very much work, with the DCAU's Crime Syndicate having been defeated and imprisoned around the exact same time that Jessica's Woodland origin plays out. I think you see where I'm going with this.
It's all connected.
Theoretically, the Crisis on Two Earths Power Ring could have lost his ring when he was incarcerated, or perhaps he was even killed off screen.
Who died and made you boss?
You, I guess. Then his ring makes its way to Jessica. Yes, this Crime Syndicate was more based on the 2000s version because Darkseid War hadn't happened yet, but the pieces of the puzzle are all still there. Power Ring was a character within the DCAU, it's 95% certain to say. Plenty of more modern comics elements have already made their way into DCAU continuity, like Ms. Martian, Argus, or even Jessica Cruz herself. And if I trust anyone to adapt and meld all this together accurately and intelligently, it's going to be Fatal Five's own Mr. Eric. I purposely called back to the Arkham Asylum timeline from Return of the Joker and explained every other leaker's absence in this movie, Carrasco.
He's a genius, an architect and designer. He's a composer and a
magician.
That's enough. Nobody likes a brown nose.
These are characters you grew up with. You get in there and you've been practicing to write that story your whole life. Like, I used to write Justice League fanfiction. Like, it's like a thing that I felt very prepared to do very quickly. And when it comes time for them to fight the Fatal Five, you're ready.
Okay, that's a chill on the back of your neck, moment for fans of a certain age.
It's me. Those fans are me.
So, we have all the possible info collected, but it's still kind of up in the air whether Jessica just got a Green Lantern ring at some point, unrelated to any Crime Syndicate stuff, or if Power Ring's Power Ring got to her first. I've been rifling through all of this data for years since the movie came out, struggling to agree with myself on what makes the most sense. But I think I finally cracked the code. After rewatching this movie like 5 or 6 times past whatever ungodly amount I've already watched it, something peculiar stuck out to me. The Fatal Five, or a terrible trio at this point. Oh, Threatening 3 says the soundtrack much better. Yet they don't just go back in time seeking any Green Lantern. They go back for Jessica Cruz specifically. They time travel just to find her. Despite Jessica being new to the scene in the present day of the film, we do see that by 1,000 years in the future, she's among the Legion of Superheroes museum exhibits, standing proudly alongside other well-known Earth-based Green Lanterns. Don't ask about Hal or Guy or why Kyle's in a different suit. We've already discussed those in other videos. We've been doing this a long time. What do you want from me? But Jessica clearly made her mark in history.
Jessica Cruz. It's an honor.
The Fatal Five come back to a point where she's barely been a GL. In fact, they technically intend to come back 10 months earlier than when they wind up actually encountering her, to that November 20 blankety blank date, aka 2004. There must be a reason for this. Could this be the exact date that Jessica first gets a Green Lantern ring and she's at her most vulnerable and inexperienced? Maybe.
So you're telling me there's a chance?
Damn you, Fatal Five being able to see the entire DCAU timeline. Give me the deets!
America, explain!
The Threatening 3 force Jessica to free their comrades from prison cells on the planet Oa, and once they've officially Fatal Fived, Persuader straight up destroys Jessica's ring.
You can kiss my axe.
In the context of the fight, this act could simply just be to take her and her ring off the board, getting her out of the way. But it also could be that they're aware her ring isn't like the others, that it could potentially pose a real threat if she knew what she was wielding. I suspect this because, well,
we need only find the key.
You're the key. The key!
They have to use Jessica's ring to unlock the prison cells. They need her ring.
You shouldn't have used your ring.
Why?
When lambs is lost in the mountain, they cry. Sometimes come the mother, sometimes the wolf.
I'll steal it! No one will ever know!
Why couldn't they have gone back to JLU time and made Jon Stewart open the cells? Or back to Superman the Animated Series and made Kyle Rayner do it? Or back to Batman the Animated Series and found Abin Sur floating around somewhere and made him do it? Well, the real answer to that is because the other 2 Fatal Fivians weren't imprisoned yet in those earlier time periods. The Legion of Superheroes took them back to a very specific point in the past, when
most of the Green Fascist Corps are currently fighting some obscure war on Ram.
But even so, we still see Kilowog, Salak, Chassalon, even Arcus Chummock. Wait, didn't he die?
That is Barir Watt, not Arcus Chummock.
Thank you, Eric. See, my guy thinks of everything. They have their pick of the Lantern litter, but they choose Jessica. They need Jessica. Like Starboy said,
she's the key!
You need more evidence. I get it. Here it is. In the comics, Power Ring's ring speaks to Jessica. It literally talks to her. In the animated movie, her Green Lantern ring also speaks. GL rings sometimes do this in the comics too, but as far as my aging, stuffed too full of Batman trivia brain can remember, we've never seen this behavior from a GL ring in any other DCAU movie, episode, nothing.
Jessica Cruz.
What the hell are you talking about? Who are you talking to?
We've theorized that this universe's lantern rings are capable of housing entities or spirits in our video about the yellow weakness. So is it possible that this is Volthoom we're hearing? Power Rings, spooky ghost host? Is Tom Kenny voicing Volthoom in this movie? Eric Carrasco even tweeted that in an early draft of the final Jessica versus the Fatal Five fight, she would have conjured nightmarish images from her ring.
We had a version where she said something like, "This ring's powered by imagination, and you have no idea how many bad things I imagine every day." And then she unleashed all these monsters, including, notably, the kidnapper from her origin.
And when I checked Dwayne McDuffie's original Crisis on Two Earths script for any further clues, I found a deleted dialogue exchange between Jon Stewart and Power Ring of the Crime Syndicate, where Power Ring taunts GL. "You know what your weakness is, pal? You've got no imagination." To which Jon replies, "Wanna know the secret of the ring, pal? It's not about imagination. It's about willpower." Contradictory? No. Revealing. To me, all this means that Jessica doesn't have a garden variety Green Lantern ring, but something unique.
Something sharp, something new.
Personally, based on what we get from the movie and its timing in the greater DCAU, I am convinced that Jessica did get Power Ring's ring first. And I'd even be willing to put some green of my own on the whole Black Racer destroys it and she gets a GL ring instead, not being a part of things here, or that the ring from the Crime Syndicate was ever destroyed at all. No, instead, I think this still is Power Ring's ring.
Merciful heavens.
See, the majority of off-screen lore we've missed out on here as an audience is the portion of time where Jessica had to fight off Volthoom's control and come out the other side as a superhero, like we saw in her original New 52 depiction. If she defeated Volthoom in the JLU world, then it's not out of the question that she could have been offered a position in the Green Lantern Corps and simply purified the evil ring. We've even seen this sort of thing before. In the Static Shock GL crossover episode, Sinestro's parading around pretending to be Jon Stewart, having absorbed Green Lantern energy into his yellow ring. And at the end, Jon even takes that energy back, returning the ring to normal. It's outer space sci-fi comic book shit.
Anything goes.
But it's established canon. In theory, Volthoom would continue to reside inside the ring, but now he's essentially cleansed of whatever corrupt cryptic crap he was made from before. And Jessica Cruz gets, well, promoted to Green Lantern of Earth, the backup of a backup. Watch out for buses, girl.
Cruz, this isn't what I thought it was.
Look, I'm fully aware I've brought you on quite the roller coaster of a tale here, so for the sake of clarity, let's lay this whole thing out in order.
I want to point out and the timeline.
Okay, Jon Stewart is Green Lantern throughout the Justice League cartoon. After the series finale, here comes the DCAU version of Crisis on Two Earths, or Worlds Collide, or whatever you want to call it. The Crime Syndicate is defeated, and all its members are locked away, including the artist formerly known as Power Ring. Meanwhile, Jessica Cruz and two background extras make their way through the forest at night, stumbling on a serial killer. Jessica barely gets away. Power Ring's ring is confiscated or otherwise taken from him by means unknown. And if you want that to be Sinestro, that's cool by me, some kinda there can only be one evil Green Lantern, bah! Needing a host, that ring, via the spirit of Volthoom, seeks out Jessica Cruz, whose life and psyche are in shambles after her very recent near-death experience. And she becomes the new Power Ring. Maybe even while falling off the cliff, it could happen, it works! Sailor Moon camera orbit machine, go! Now, I love this scene from her original comics where she walks through the street possessed, unable to control her actions, and it takes Batman trauma bonding with her over witnessing the murders of loved ones to break her out of that trance and allow her to take control of the ring. It's a very Kevin Conroy Batman moment. However, Batman and Jessica don't seem to have much of a relationship in the Fatal Five movie, so I'll leave it up to you and your heart canon for whether this part happened in the DCAU. But either way, Jessica manages to overcome Volthoom's, power. Per the Two Earths movie, we've got the new Watchtower now, and the team has begun to expand. So, as Wonder Woman alludes to, the Justice League rightfully invites Jessica to join.
You've got what it takes, Jessica. So stop screening our calls.
But there's, of course, a problem. They also can't just have a new ring-wielding superhero waltzing around without some sort of checks and balances situation. So after a while, Jon Stewart calls up the Guardians, who take her in for training and to purify the ring. After all, they've likely got experience doing the same with Parallax in this universe. Am I right, Green Lantern Yellow weakness video that didn't get as many views as it should have?
I'm not angry. I'm just disappointed.
And there we are.
So that's how it happened.
Ultimately, when it comes to these kinds of, hey, a bunch of shit happened off screen that we're gonna let the fans figure out things, the writers and animators and all of them will do a lot of, look over here, don't think about it, hand waving.
I love loose cannoning. You know, I love the power of no consequences.
Did Bruce Timm and his team think about any of this stuff when plotting out the movie? The fact that its first promotional image featured assets from Crisis on Two Earths has me thinking the Crime Syndicate may have been a part part of the story in some way in the original Barassa-style version, but we may never know for certain. Even back at the WonderCon panel for #JL versus F5, Eric Carrasco was being asked the most pedantic audience questions, like how time travel worked in the movie, or why Jessica still had power to her ring after the Fatal Five absorbed the entire Lantern battery, and he clearly didn't account for all of these things, but he shouldn't be expected to. Like I've said, if anybody's gonna do it, it'd be him, a kid who grew up on JLU and then got to write a JLU movie, that lucky son of a bitch.
Some things can't be taught. Some things you only get through experience.
Like?
Clarity.
The writer's job is to tell a good story, not try and write the DCAU Silmarillion. The sandbox is there to play in without making too much of a mess. Then we come along, the fans, the ridiculously nitpicky, anal retentive, should be in Arkham ourselves fans. And whenever we're presented with a lot of new information at once, it's our self-appointed responsibility to make heads or tails of it as best we can. No unsupervised continuity shall escape our sight, in brightest day nor blackest night.
You can win a no prize, though, if you explain it away.
Okie dokie. As an added bonus for making it all the way to the end of this interstellar investigation, here's a sneak peek at our very next video.
And tell them I said nice work, too.
Oh! I hope you're excited to hear us finally dive headfirst into Batman Caped Crusader. I know I am. There's way more to talk about than you might think. But for now, my question of the day is, do you like Jessica Cruz's hair long or short? Yes, this really is the question of the day. Thank you so very much to all of our Patreon supporters who you see listed here before you, and to Displate once again for sponsoring this video. P.S. As a lifelong Oregonian, I will never get tired of hearing Kevin Conroy say,
Portland, Oregon.
Ooh, do it again.
Portland, Oregon.